The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Wednesday, June 16th, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for the next 60 minutes of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. Coming to you live from Rolla J Studios in beautiful Portland, Oregon, where it's not a typo, it's a way of life. And running the show behind the scenes, our own Ganja John.
You know, Russ, I just realized when you said the date that I mentioned on the show yesterday that it was the weekend of my parents' anniversary, but it was yesterday. So, sorry, Mom and Dad, I completely forgot.
So the anniversary was yesterday.
Yeah, but the weekend, this weekend is their anniversary weekend. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cannabis Cup, here we come.
That's right. We will be at the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. Check out medcancup.com for more information. The first ever High Times Cannabis Cup in the United States. Ganja John and I will be there bringing you live coverage right here on NORML Show Live. And joining us from our virtual studio in beautiful Astoria, Oregon, my good friend and half sister, Cannabis Carrie.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, we're glad to have you back, Carrie. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Still kind of confused once in a while, but that might never go away.
That might never go away. How's your fingernail?
It's good. It's real good. It's healing very nicely.
Glad to hear it. Carrie brings us our hemp headlines right after the first break. So, Carrie, what's in the news today?
Well, it's very exciting, especially coming from a lawyer seminar. I get to report on a Supreme Court ruling that will absolutely affect some cannabis consumers in our country. Also, a new vocational school that just got some accreditation that our listeners might be interested in. And, Russ, because you love them, I decided to do a stupid stoner story for today. But to make it more fun for me, I've changed the rules a little bit. I'll tell you more about that after the break.
Oh, changing the rules right in the middle of the game. Sounds like our federal government. All right. Thanks, Carrie. We'll get right back to you after the first break. And also on today's show, it is Irie Wednesday. Every day we do a daily toker tune from various genres. And today, Irie Wednesday, we tackle world music, reggae, calypso, Latin, and so on. Our music editor, Johnny Reeferseed from Iowa, will be bringing us a tune from Skyhouse called Marijuana. So check that out at 20 after. At 30 after the hour, our most popular segment of the entire week to celebrate Hump Day, Dr. Mitch Earlywine from SUNY Albany joins us to answer your live questions from our chat room about cannabis. It could be about history, about the medicine, the science, the culture of marijuana. Anything you want to know, Dr. Mitch can probably answer it. To get into our chat room, you just need to click the plus magnifying glass that you see on the main window. Sign up on Stickum to create yourself an account because it's members only. But once you're logged in, we'll get your questions asked to Dr. Mitch, and we'll get the answers live on the air. And at the end of the show, a little bit of radical ranting from my home state of Oregon, where a 9-year Oregon National Guardsman is being threatened with court-martial, bust in rank, and possible jail terms for using medical marijuana legally in the state of Oregon. All that at the end of the show.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hello, I'm Radical Russ Belville, Outreach Coordinator for NORML and host of NORML Show Live. Medical marijuana is legal in 14 states today, and I encourage you to visit marijuanadoctors.com to find a physician to help you obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in your state. In most medical marijuana states, patients qualify with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis, and other conditions which vary by state. Learn which conditions are covered in your state at marijuanadoctors.com. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, marijuanadoctors.com will help you find a physician online or by phone to obtain a permit for medical marijuana. Marijuanadoctors.com is fully transparent and HIPAA compliant. Call 866-996-9333 today or visit marijuanadoctors.com. That's 866-996-9333 by phone or online at marijuanadoctors.com.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
The Supreme Court has ruled in favor of an immigrant in a case that may affect thousands of others waiting behind bars for a chance to be heard. The groundbreaking case should clarify automatic deportation laws. The case of Karachuri Rosendo versus Holder will challenge the way our government interprets immigration laws about drug-related convictions. Unlike the criminal justice system, which must deal with defendants in the jurisdiction where their offenses occurred, immigration authorities can send detainees anywhere in the country without notice or legal counsel and start deportation proceedings whenever they choose. The Obama administration has stepped up detention and deportation of so-called criminal aliens, including many legal immigrants with low-level drug convictions. The Karachu Rosendo versus Holder case involves a longtime legal resident of Texas who in 2004 was convicted of possessing less than 2 ounces of marijuana, and in 2005 he was convicted of a second drug possession offense for having a single anti-anxiety tablet, Xanax, without a valid prescription. After the second conviction, he was deported to Mexico. His fiancée and 4 of his children, all United States citizens, were left behind. 86% of immigration detainees who face deportation in Texas, a common place where we send them, don't have lawyers, and a federal appeal of their case will cost them about $10,000. In the ruling, which was delivered yesterday, the Supreme Court blocked the government Tuesday from deporting legal immigrants for minor drug possession charges, ruling that only serious or violent crimes called for removing otherwise law-abiding people from this country. Rosendo was facing deportation. Rosendo did get deported to Mexico where he was born, and he had moved to Texas with his parents when he was only 4 years old and had become a lawful permanent resident with a wife and 4 children. His case illustrates the harsh effects of a 1996 federal law that requires the deportation of non-citizens guilty of an aggravated felony. Immigration judges have said in the past that a second drug possession conviction could qualify as an aggravated felony. The Supreme Court has now decisively rejected that view with a stunning 9-0 decision. Now, a case of another man that we had reported on, Jerry LeMaine, if you remember this. He was a New Yorker who was facing deportation to Haiti after being found with a single joint, where 10 years earlier when he was a teenager, he had a minor cannabis possession charge. Well, he had been waiting in a jail cell in Texas where a judge had said he would wait for this decision before ruling in his case. So it seems like he will be the second cannabis consumer who will benefit from this landmark decision.
Wow, it's a thorny issue when we start talking about immigration in this country, and people have a lot of viewpoints about that. But in this case, we're talking about a guy who's lived here since he was 4 years old. He's become a legal permanent resident. Now, that doesn't mean that he's an American citizen, but that does mean that he has applied for permanent residency. He's got a fiancé. He's got children in this country. And the idea that we would deport people just over a marijuana charge. Now, it is kind of ironic that that was the entire reason that marijuana was made criminal in the first place back at the beginning of the 20th century when we faced immigrants coming in from the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, California, and they wanted to have a way of rounding those people up and be able to keep tabs on them, and one of the ways they did it was by declaring their loco weed a crime, and that's even where we get the term marijuana. It's actually cannabis, of course, but we call it marijuana because the government at the time wanted to use a scary Mexican Mexican word rather than cannabis or hemp, which everybody already understood. So it is ironic that this is the reason why so many people were getting deported, but good news that the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, decided that minor marijuana possession isn't worthy of kicking someone out of the country. I think that's something we can all agree on.
And a new vocational school in Colorado has just had their school's curriculum approved by the Colorado Department of Higher Education. Greenway University, an educational facility designed to educate students on the growing and selling of marijuana, now has the blessings of the state to give Colorado students seeking professional accreditation a degree. According to their website, Greenway University is dedicated to being an industry leader and an institution of excellence for academics in the field of medical marijuana and cannabis. Greenway University already has Votech schools in California and New Jersey, but their Colorado campus is the first school to win the approval of the state, which will license and regulate the school. If you want to attend the first accredited cannabis school, you might take classes like how to open a medical marijuana dispensary or business practices of successful cultivation and grow operations, alongside traditional Votech Business School classes such as Business Fundamentals 101. Gus Escamilla, the CEO of Greenway University, has said that for now, cannabis will not be allowed in the classroom. Greenway University has struggled on the road to accreditation. They were unable to find a property for the school until just recently, and they also struggled with securing investments for this type of business. But the nod of approval from the Department of Higher Education will no doubt open the doors for more schools of this type to give them some competition.
Well, good news for Greenway University on getting their accreditation. Again, the first school that we've heard of that's gotten this kind of accreditation, even though we've got the Oaksterdam University that's a very successful university in California, and many other schools that are starting to appear in the medical marijuana states. This is one of those types of industries that we've talked about, these ancillary industries that are springing up around medical marijuana, not having anything to do with buying or selling the marijuana itself, but making a business based on helping people with medical marijuana. Now, as far as this school getting its accreditation, one thing that I think about is as this becomes more of a mainstream industry, as medical marijuana becomes more accepted, and as we start to get states that legalize marijuana, period, just for all adults, I think it's going to be interesting how these schools will have to get their accreditation because, you know, part of what they're teaching is business, right? So do they have to go to the same places business schools go to get their accreditation? Some of what they're teaching is horticulture. Do they have to go to the places where, you know, horticultural schools, botany schools are accredited? It'll be really interesting to see how this develops, but this is nothing but good news for our movement.
Stupid Stoner Stories. As a public service, NORML reminds you that smoking marijuana will not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana. Don't be one of those stoners that make the rest of us look bad. Learn your lesson from today's Stupid Stoner Story.
Now, I've thought about these segments, and I have decided to change the names of the not innocent to protect their identities, as it seems that many a stupid stoner turns out to be a young adult with a sad case of stupid. Criminals surely must know by now that choosing to commit crimes leaving internet data trails like on eBay or Craigslist is creating evidence that no lawyer can defend. But since challenged cannabis consumers are not usually criminally minded, they often take silly chances that lead to being featured on NORML Show Live Stupid Stoner segments. Craig Slist, I've changed his name, a 20-year-old Arizona man posted an ad on Craigslist offering to trade his Apple iTouch and some high-grade marijuana for an Apple iPad. As every eBayer or Craiglister knows, photos usually seal the deal, so he also added pictures of both the marijuana and his iTouch. The marijuana was listed as a quarter of dank Blue Dream straight out of Cali, showed the marijuana he was offering up as part of the trade, sitting it on a scale so would-be traders would know that he was on the up and up. Gilbert, Arizona detectives who must love the ease of Craigslist to bust people that they used to have to chase down in cheap hotels with expensive surveillance equipment and teams of specially equipped vans were cruising through the website when they stumbled on Mr. Slist's ad. With a few clicks of a mouse, they set up a meeting where Slist handed over the quarter ounce of marijuana, dreaming about the fun he would have with his new iPad. But instead, he was met with metal handcuffs. Craig Slist and another 20-year-old that went with him on the doomed deal were both arrested at the scene.
I'm just going to say I saw the picture that he posted on Craigslist. I mean, it looked like some pretty dank weed. I mean, I got to give the guy some credit. But I mean, honestly, you know, I've dealt with Craigslist a lot, and a quarter of an ounce and a iPod for an iPad, that's a bad deal for the
It was
iPad
an
guy.
iTouch, John.
Well,
it was an iTouch.
Still, bad deal. Bad deal.
What is an iTouch now?
No, it's basically the iPhone without the phone.
I see.
Right.
It's a mini iPad.
Tiny little iPad.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, always a bad idea to be admitting to committing felonies with photographic evidence. If we have to make a general rule.
Yeah, I mean the scales, the show. I mean, you're just telling everybody that you're not. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. In a lot of these cases, when people are convicted and they just have possession, once they find the scale, that's intent to distribute. So that's a whole new type of felony conviction we're talking about here. And Carrie, thank you for changing the rules to protect the guilty or to protect the stupid, however we want to say it here. But that's our warning for today. Learn your lesson from this story. Don't post for trading weed on the internet. Never a good idea. Now, before we move on, I did want to get to a giveaway that we're going to do here at Normal Show Live, and I don't have a sound effect for it right now, but we'll find something interesting, I'm sure. But maybe
that might have not worked.
That might not.
That was the Carrie sound.
Oh, thanks.
That's terrible. Here at Normal Show Live, we have a whole bunch of musicians that we feature on our daily Toker Tunes, and invariably they give us CDs, all sorts of CDs here that we just have sitting here in the offices, and I feel like we should give them away. I'm going to give them away as a 3-pack, and I've got 2 sets of these 3-packs here of CDs. The first one is the newest from Ian Lloyd, In the Land of Oedipo. We played 2 of his songs, Oedipo and High to Fly. That's one of the CDs, kind of a rock CD. Then for country, we've got Chief Greenbud's first CD. This has got all of Chief Greenbud's favorite hits here. A Friend with Weed, Hard Life, the Marijuana song, Legalization song, Christmas Without Weed. All here, second CD, very country-like. And then an EP. This is like a 5-song promo EP from a rap group called Nuff Said, I think. Nuffsed. Nuff Said. The CD's called Head Stash. I've got 2 sets of these, 3 CDs each that are a giveaway. And here's how you can win. Send an email to stash@normal.org containing a picture of yourself with a protest sign protesting for marijuana legalization. I don't care when it was. I don't care where it was. A picture of you with a protest sign, and you win one of these 2 sets of 3 CDs from Ian Lloyd, Chief Greenbud, and Nuff Said. Get those emails to me at stash@normal.org, and the first ones that I get will be the winners. Don't forget to include your mailing address so I can send those CDs out to you if you happen to be the winner. Also, want to encourage everyone to get involved with your own liberation fight to end marijuana prohibition by joining NORML today. NORML.org. We really, really need your help. It's a very critical time in drug law reform, and NORML is standing tall. We've got some other groups that are having some problems right now, and NORML is not one of them. So get involved with NORML. We're still standing, and we're going to keep fighting for an end to adult marijuana prohibition. Check us out at normal.org, and check out our blog, the Stash blog, at stash.normal.org. That's where you'll get the downloads for all of the music that we play on the show. And I've posted a couple of maps today that you'll be very interested in. I've got the June 2010 medical marijuana map, although it's really more than just medical marijuana. It's a map of all the marijuana law reforms in the United States. Decriminalization, medical marijuana, plus things like industrial hemp, where there are per se zero-tolerance DUID laws, otherwise known as places stoners shouldn't drive. We've got information on where the states are that have dispensaries in this country, if they're medical marijuana states, and plenty more on that map. And then I've created a new map today called the Marijuana Felonies Map. And what this does is it shows you in a color-coded map which states have the highest limits before you start tripping over a felony. For example, in Florida, the worst state, if you have more than 20 grams on you, that's a little more than 3/4 of an ounce. If you've got more than that on you, you're a felon automatically. But meanwhile, in states, let's see, we've got states like, I think it was Kansas, or let's see if I can find the state. I think it was Texas, actually, where you have to have a full pound before you are considered a felon automatically. No, I'm sorry, not Texas. Utah. Yeah, Utah, believe it or not. You have to have a full pound on you before you're automatically considered a felon. So check those maps out at stash.normal.org.
Sorry, I had some cat trouble.
We had the cat crawling on the board.
Yeah.
She likes to do that. Hey, folks, it's 20 after the hour. It's time for us to take a break. We want to thank Rolla J for this break. We're right back after this.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Normal Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Law420.com.
Hello, I'm Russ Belville, Outreach Coordinator for NORML. In my job, I read literally hundreds of headlines each month involving nonviolent, productive citizens whose lives are ripped apart by a marijuana or drug arrest. Many citizens could avoid arrest by refusing police searches and remaining silent, but police are well trained to confuse and intimidate. That's why you have a right to speak to an attorney before answering any police questions. I hope you never need to exercise that right, but if you do, make your first call to the law offices of John C. Lucy IV. John Lucy is an accomplished criminal defense attorney with expertise in Oregon's medical marijuana law. John Lucy understands and respects cannabis and drug consumers of all backgrounds. Call John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit in downtown Portland. Address available at law420.com. That's John C. Lucy IV at 503-227-6000 or visit law420.com today. It's time for your Daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420-friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Our pod-safe music is donated by freedom-loving musicians who support our goal of ending adult marijuana prohibition. Today we get tunes for Irie Wednesday, our celebration of that mellow vibe we find in the best of reggae, ska, calypso, world, and Latin music. Brought to you by Johnny Reeferseed and the High Rollers in Des Moines, Iowa, America's favorite red-eyed soul rock and roll band, now available on iTunes and CD Baby. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Normal Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org or mail your CD to Normal Outreach, 4110 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard, number 161, Portland, Oregon, 97214. Now, here's some great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes. All right, everybody, it's 23 after the hour. We're having some difficulty getting Johnny Reeferseed on the line in Iowa, so I'll just go ahead and read his intro for the song. Sky House is the musical mothership of Harris, Levon McRae, and Betts Pot. Both Betts and Harris are songwriters and multi-instrumentalists playing an interesting mix of musical instruments, including guitar, bass, keyboards, piano, banjo, harmonica, and percussion. Not all at once, I don't think. They have developed a sound that they have called Freggae. It's a combination of folk rock and reggae with all kinds of other things thrown in. Betts and Harris have really embraced the concept of the sound system, a group of DJs and engineers contributing and working together as one, often playing and producing one particular kind of music, such as reggae or hip-hop, to rock the party. The duo has expanded the concept to include a wide variety of music and many types of musicians. House in the Sky's crew members have been on some of the most creative of the galaxy. They include Mel Nair on saxophone, Mike Braun of Hall & Oates, and Ken Woodside on drums, and Joe Root on the keyboards. Today's Irie Toker tune, Marijuana, is another nominee of the Marijuana Music Awards. Find out more about Marijuana Music Awards at marijuanamusicawards.com. Find out more about House in the Sky at myspace.com/skyhousemusic. This is Skyhouse with Marijuana.
It's not playing, of course.
It's not going to play. Well, what a bummer. See if I can play it off mine here. All right, we'll see if that link will click up. Boy, we're having all sorts of fun here in the studio, and of course mine won't go either. Okay, we'll pull this up manually.
Yeah, you gonna get it on there?
Yeah, I think I can pull mine up manually here. We're having a little fun here. Thanks for sticking with us here. As we get this fixed, I will pull it up on the old Windows Media Player. We'll see if it'll work that way. Sorry for the delay, folks. This happens sometimes when we're working live. And still pulling up, and let's give it, one more second here to pull up. We're doing it live, and go.
Marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, so baby, let's go. Touch up, you Nirvana. Make sure, kinda wanna. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh, tonight. You blow, so baby, let's go. Every time she walks into a room, everybody's hearts go boom, boom, boom. Come a room for her eyes, just say. Once she gets into your head, she's gonna have a way. Moves mysterious like a puff of smoke. She mingles and she jiggles and she ain't no joke. Does a dance, puts you in a trance, and you find yourself in a sweet romance with Mary, marijuana. Do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, you blow, so baby, let's go. Touch up, pure Nirvana. Make sure, kinda wanna. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh, tonight. You blow, so baby, let's go. Moves mysterious through the air like a puff of smoke, and if you get too close, feel like a heat stroke. Can't breathe, down on your knees. Marijuana, and you ain't too pleased. Like a fire, so you don't get tired. One touch of her lips, and you feel inspired. Love train, she gets inside your brain. Come a little closer, and you feel no pain. With marijuana, do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, you blow, so baby, let's go. Touch it, pure Nirvana. Make sure, kinda wanna. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh, tonight. You blow, so baby, let's go. Sticky smell of a sweet perfume lingers in the air as she fills the room. Come here, rude boy, her smile will say, forget about tomorrow, let's fly away. Mary Jane, that is her name. Love is crime, it makes her feel no pain. Gets a party started, it goes on and on. Party all night till the break of dawn with marijuana. Do you wanna? Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, you blow, so baby, let's go. Touch her, pure Nirvana. Make sure, kinda wanna. Mary, do you wanna? Tonight, oh, tonight, oh, tonight, oh, tonight.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527. Normal Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure.
Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go. If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at NORML.org.
It's time for NORML Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany. Now, open wide and say, ah. Here's your dose of cannabis science.
Well, we've had a week off while I was gone to Aspen, but we're glad to have back on our show Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Mitch, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, how have things been going for you for the past couple of weeks? Been a while since we spoke.
Oh, we had a couple of good things show up lately. Last time, someone had asked about hemp oil versus gasoline, and just wanted to say that it looks like a gallon of hemp oil burns about like a gallon of diesel fuel, but I'm not recommending anybody throw any hemp oil into their regular car.
Right. Okay. Any new studies or scientific information in the past couple weeks we may have missed?
It turns out that some work in basically in the Petri dishes is showing, no big surprise to our listeners, that THC in particular and some of the other cannabinoids work a little bit like one of the old antidepressants that inhibits the monoamine oxidase. And I think that that's some compelling work explaining how cannabis might work as an antidepressant.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. We'll keep our eye on that. I have a question for you that I wanted to start off with, and I want to remind folks listening that if you want to get your question asked here, you can create an account on Stick'em and join us in the chat room. Cannabis Carry will pick up your chat questions and text them to me. But to get the ball rolling here, I had a question about our history, our heritage. Oftentimes on the internet, we see people talking about the founding fathers whenever we bring up the subject of marijuana, and they'll reference the founding fathers growing hemp and so on. And every now and then we get quotes that we see about Thomas Jefferson or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln using cannabis. There's the famous Lincoln quote of sitting on his porch playing harmonica, or Thomas Jefferson sitting on the veranda and smoking while he looks over the hemp fields. Is there any evidence that, aside from being hemp farmers growing it for industrial purposes, is there evidence of any of our founding fathers being recreational or medicinal cannabis users?
Despite what everyone has said, I haven't been able to find any of this evidence. So George Washington in particular doesn't seem to have anything in his journals suggesting he had used cannabis recreationally. Hemp tinctures were very popular medicinally at the time, and they could have used them, but it would have been rather unremarkable. It would have been like writing in your journal that you had taken some aspirin or something. It seems unlikely that they would have marked that. Thomas Jefferson apparently in his journals has something where he mentions it. Everybody keeps telling me this, but no one can actually seem to come up with the reference. And Lincoln, again, that sort of same predicament. So folks point to evidence that he was a hemp farmer. There's even some quotes of him saying, I got to go out and separate the males and the females, but that doesn't mean he was smoking the females. It's more likely that he was using the males for the stalks in order to create, basically hemp fiber. A lot of folks turned away from hemp after a while because it was just very hard on the slaves, and to even talk about the idea that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson had slaves is kind of controversial, but guess what? That was what was going on in the era, and I think in some ways it was kind of nice of them to say, hey, this is too hard on my slaves, I don't want to grow it anymore. So thank God we've got new hemp decorticators.
Yeah, and how about Benjamin Franklin? A few people are asking about Ben Franklin. He had a printing, he was making hemp paper, I understand, but again, nothing with recreational for Ben Franklin.
He was the one who I was most excited about, so I actually went through one of his autobiographies, and again, it was mentioned as part of the industrial work he was doing. He even wrote a nasty letter to basically the British government saying, we need our hemp for ourselves, we're not shipping any to you guys, which, sounds like somebody protecting their own pot, but in fact it was that hemp was such a valuable product, and in part because tobacco was making so much money, they really didn't have room to grow a whole lot of extra for the British government.
Yeah, always very interesting. And I would also note that the Abraham Lincoln quote about smoking hemp and playing harmonica, the Hohner harmonica that he mentioned wasn't even invented until after Lincoln had died. So that quote definitely suspect. All right, let's go to our chat room here where we've got a lot of questions that are building up here. We start with Sneaker Pimp 420, who wants to know if there are any new studies of cannabis helping for ADHD.
We're now getting quite a handful of ADHD individual cases, clinical studies, folks who are emailing me swearing by it. But as you can imagine, there's no randomized control trial sponsored by the government to show how this works. I'm looking forward to the day when maybe somebody who's got a federally approved source of cannabis will turn to this. But unfortunately, the data are still essentially N of 1 type studies. We don't have a big study showing that it works. The folks who use it have a pretty dichotomous response. There's sort of a subset of folks who just swear by it, another subset who realize that it's just no help at all, and that may be strain dependent. And of course, we can't find that out given our current situation with prohibition.
Right. Okay. Destruction has a question wanting to know, is it true that making or creating hash oils from chemicals, and I assume he's talking like butane extraction, is illegal?
It's, at least in the United States, illegal, but also incredibly dangerous. And so I want to say, this is something you want to leave for the pros. The flammability of most of the solvents involved in making hash oil is frightening, like on par to like meth lab dangerous. And so I really think, particularly given all the good strains we have here in the U.S., this is probably more effort than it's worth for your average user.
Okay. Question from Shafe here regarding health. Does cannabis have any effect on your heart? Can it cause chest pains?
It turns out cannabis tends to increase heart rate, and so that tachycardia seems to be what can be problematic for folks if they already have problems with irregular heart rhythms or if they're at high risk for a heart attack. As far as producing chest pains, it's probably more related to inhalation of smoke and holding it in for a long time. And this notion that a big lung buster hit held a long time is somehow a good use of your body is probably worthy of dispute. James Zachney's data suggests that just inhaling and blowing it out will probably get you just as high, and the only reason people feel higher is because they've held their breath.
Okay. This next question comes from Bubba007, and I'm going to reword it a little bit, and I hope I get the meaning he was intending here, or she. Guess Bubba could be a she. Probably not. But anyway, the question here has to do with all of the science that we discussed showing not only the medical benefits, but how it can be beneficial to one's health to use cannabis. Why is it in our legalization fight we shy away from promoting it as a health benefit, and instead we always point out the harms of prohibition?
It's intriguing, and this is actually some approach based on the data on persuasion literature. So generally, folks don't respond too well to some kinds of arguments and respond better to other ones. And this is the one that we've selected in part because it looks like people are more reactive to hearing about something negative and getting rid of it than they are about hearing something positive and approaching it. I'm not absolutely crystal clear sure that this is the lone approach we should take, and I like the idea of pointing out health benefits, but I've seen the alcohol world run into problems with this as well. So the wine industry has written entire books about the health benefits of alcohol, and people just don't seem to respond well under these circumstances. We've got this cognitive bias, if you will, against certain substances, and this is why this argument that we're making now may be more productive than saying, look, cannabis helps you.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. I understand. All right, we are sitting here talking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine from SUNY Albany, taking your questions on cannabis science, and the next one here comes from J.J. Huddle, who wants to know what potency of marijuana would you recommend for a non-smoker with Parkinson's disease who wants to try it but has never smoked before?
The clincher here may not be potency so much as dosage. So starting out with a vaporized small amount and giving the person plenty of time after the initial hit to let all the effects kick in is the ideal way to move into this, particularly if you're in a medical state where you can identify a strain that other folks with this disorder tend to praise. That would be the way I would recommend going.
Yeah, good point. And I found that in my own activism, working with so many patients, especially people who have never been around the culture, never been around cannabis in their lives, and they're a little frightened of it. They're frightened of losing control. The only reference point they have is possibly alcohol, so they really don't know, and the propaganda of the government. So they really don't know what they're getting themselves into, and it can be a very scary first time for these people. So I agree with you as far as going with vaporization rather than smoking. But if they don't have a vaporizer and smoking is their only possible way to make this work, any other tips that might help them as a first-time smoker?
The clincher is set and setting. So if you're in a nice environment, surrounded by nice tunes, people you love, pleasant food, that's going to be the way to go. And then always, even if you do have to smoke, start with a very small dose and give yourself plenty of time for it to kick in. So none of this, I tried it once and waited 5 minutes and so I hit more. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and take really the smallest puff, particularly when people are early in their experience with it. They don't know how to inhale well and all of that stuff. Give themselves a full half an hour and see where am I now, and then decide if they want to try more or not, and give it a few tries. This is the kind of thing where you need 3 sessions to really see what's going on. You can't judge a single medicine on one implementation. If you think about it, other medications we use, we have people stay on them often for 2 weeks before we decide does it work or not. And I think that it seems only fair to give cannabis a 3-session deal.
All right. Question here from RoboHit234, who wants to know, is there evidence that marijuana hurts people with asthma or possibly helps people with asthma?
There's at least one study suggesting that bronchial passages respond nicely to cannabis. This is a situation where if they're opening up nicely, though, you're also increasing your chances of the bad parts of smoke getting in there because they've opened up so nicely. So another call out for vaporization under these circumstances. But the individual differences in this response are pretty vast, so it's not the kind of thing that is a guarantee for everybody. It's like a lot of medications, particularly good for some folks, less good for others.
Okay. And kind of a follow-up here on talking about cannabis culture. I'm getting this from some of the chat that I'm reading. I'm just going to put it together as a question. We were talking about the founding fathers and their use of hemp, and you and I have talked many times of going back all the way to emperor in China, 5,000 years worth of human use of cannabis, but we see that it was used in ancient history, as medicine, as fiber and so on, as food. But only in the past, century or so have we seen a culture around cannabis. It's my feeling that the reason we have that culture is owed to prohibition, that we all kind of have to share the same outlaw status. So to put this in question form, do you think there will still be a so-called cannabis culture after legalization, or will it become, nondescript and unimportant like aspirin?
It's curious because I can't imagine a world without the cannabis culture because I've always sort of been in one. But in fact, the big deal is going to decrease once we have federal legalization. And so we saw this go in the opposite direction now with cigarette smokers. Now that cigarette smokers are the pariahs of society, right, and they have to stand out in the cold in order to smoke somewhere, they have really bonded together and have their own jokes and their own little tales they tell because of this situation they're in based on social sanctions. As the sanctions are lifted for cannabis users, it's not going to be as big a deal. And so people are probably going to feel less compelled to really advertise themselves or go to big efforts in order to hang out with other cannabis users. But like any minority group, I think they're going to maintain the identity, just as we've seen in other communities and other groups who have been sort of persecuted in a sense and now aren't persecuted but are still considered deviant. That keeps the culture going in oddball ways, and I think that there will always be a cannabis culture, although it won't be as necessarily emphatic as it might be today.
Yeah, I kind of liken it to cigar culture. We have Cigar Aficionado magazine and cigar rooms, and special places for people to get connoisseur tobaccos for cigars. So maybe it'll turn out like that. It'll be something I'm really interested in seeing happen, that's for sure. And speaking of, speaking of full legalization, Spin 420,000 wants to know, how long do you think it will take before we get full legalization in America?
Generally, if you have to predict when is something going to happen, look at how long it's been in place and figure half again as long. That's kind of a depressing thought for us, since the Marijuana Tax Act passed in 1937. That would mean we'd still have quite a long ways to go. I know that other folks in the past, when Keith started NORML, he said 7 years. I saw an old thing of Andrew Weil saying 10 years, but I do feel like the tides have really turned. We really are at a tipping point, and I could envision, 8 years from now, at least federal decriminalization, and boy, wouldn't that be a delight.
It'd be wonderful. All right, question here from V Machine asking about one of the cannabinoids, CBN. Can that make you paranoid?
We don't have enough data for sure, but CBN is one of those ones that has this oddball, really a little, really a lot, doesn't do a lot, but somehow in the middle it has its biggest impact. So it may be a product of that, but we just don't have enough data on people getting that one administered all by itself.
Okay. Here's a question from the Aspen Legal Seminar, and I think Carrie's just bringing this one up from her experience out there, who says that someone told me after she refused a delicious edible, a medical edible, that she can't eat cannabis because it gives her terrible gas. Have you ever heard of that, cannabis eating causing gas?
I have seen a subset of folks who have gastrointestinal reactions to not only cannabis, but a whole lot of spices as well. So these are folks who also claim that turmeric or curry is very upsetting to their GI system. And there is, quite a few CB receptors along the gastrointestinal tract. It's not that standard CB1, but some CB2s as well. And so it's distinctly possible that that's the case.
Interesting. All right. Question now from Jen Alexander, and we've got time for maybe 2 more questions. If we don't get your question asked on today's show, you can always send an email directly to Dr. Mitch Earleywine at 420research@gmail.com. But we'll get a couple more questions here on the air. Based on scientific study, how does Ritalin compare to marijuana in terms of its correlation to schizophrenia?
Well, that's an intriguing question. We don't have a ton of data on Ritalin per se, but we do know the stimulants seem to work in the dopamine system, which is very involved in experiences of psychosis. So folks who have smoked a lot of crack and then suddenly start getting paranoid and thinking that Martians are planting thoughts in their brains, that's a product of that dopamine system. And Ritalin works in a comparable way, although markedly less dramatic than some of those other stimulants. With cannabis, it doesn't seem to get to the dopamine system anywhere near as directly, and the link to schizophrenia per se is actually not all that strong, as we've discussed before. So if anything, if you've got even mild magical, thoughts or a lot of schizophrenics in the family, neither of these drugs is a great idea, but Ritalin is more likely to have you start talking about zombies ruling Belgium and crazy things like that.
Oh, it's those Belgian zombies again. All right. Question here from Matter of Liberty, who asks, I have heard that cannabis helps in homeostasis. Is this true?
The bottom line is, yes, the endocannabinoid system, the cannabinoid system in our bodies is all about making sure we're not too extreme in any direction, not too sedated, not too aroused, not too up, not too down. And it seems to be essential. It also seems to keep us from essentially burning things up so fast that we create more waste products than the body can handle. The endocannabinoid system is really brilliant and intriguing, and it's a wonderful evolutionary phenomenon.
All right. And our final question for the day, this one's just a process question, I guess. They want to know, how many stoners follow up and email you after the show?
I've been getting about 4 emails a week since we started this format, which was about on par with what we used to get in the old days. So I'm really grateful, and I'm always happy to hear from folks, and by all means, keep those emails coming.
All right. Send your emails to 420research@gmail.com. Dr. Mitch will be back with us next Wednesday answering more of your questions in cannabis science. And Dr. Mitch, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 51 after the hour. I got to take some time to rant about a story that hits me in a couple of ways. Number one, it hits me because I'm an Oregonian, and this story comes out of Oregon. And number two, because I was a National Guardsman back when I lived in the state of Idaho from 1985 to 1990, served my country and the state of Idaho in the 25th Army Band, which is why during the Cold War, no Russian musicians ever crossed onto American soil. Did you know that, John?
I did not know that.
Yes, I was protecting our country. But anyway, this story, to be serious here, really hits me because it has to do with an Oregon National Guard soldier who is being disciplined over her use of medical marijuana. This was from the Oregonian. I'll read you a few paragraphs from this just to get you get the story set here. Specialist Rochelle Golden arrived at Madigan Army Medical Center in Washington State in February in a wheelchair, expecting to stay a few weeks and be medically retired. She immediately reported that she used marijuana to combat pain and nausea and produced her Oregon medical marijuana card. But 5 months later, the Oregon Army National Guard soldier is still at Joint Base Lewis McChord facing court-martial and squeezed between her home state, which allows medical marijuana, and the Army, which forbids it. In October of 2008, her crippling joint pain was diagnosed as rheumatoid arthritis and Sjogren's syndrome, an incurable autoimmune disease. By January 2009, she couldn't walk. Within months, the Salem mother of four couldn't work, and within months, the Salem mother of four couldn't walk or bathe herself. She began chemotherapy to control her flare-ups, but she vomited so much and required so much pain medicine that her doctor suggested she try medical marijuana. Retired Colonel Ray Meyer reassured Golden that she could use marijuana because she was never going to return to duty. He had filed her separation paperwork himself months earlier. After her Oregon Health and Science University oncologist wrote a recommendation, Golden obtained a medical marijuana card on January 15th. Meyer registered as the official caregiver who would bring her marijuana. So you've got a colonel telling a specialist who is puking sick and in constant pain and who has separated from active duty, right? She's expecting to just go on retirement. He's telling her, yes, try medical marijuana. It's going to help. And indeed, it does help, right? She's not having to take those massive amounts of painkillers. She's not puking. She's able to move. So this was the recommendation. This was the advice given to her by a colonel, right? But there's this little thing when you're in the National Guard, and that's something I know about. When you attach with the National Guard, you can be brought up into active duty, right, at any time during your National Guard. And we've seen that with the Iraq and the Afghanistan constantly recycling these National Guard soldiers. But what happens is after you're done with your service and you're about to process out, even when you're done with your initial enlistment, there's still a period of 2 years after that where the military can call you back. Now, this is what has happened for Specialist Golden. According to the Oregonian, in February, she was ordered to report to something called a Warrior Transition Battalion. And this is something they came up with after, you remember the reports we got about Walter Reed Army Medical Center and our soldiers, you know, being in rooms full of mold and disgusting conditions. Remember that? Well, they came up with these Warrior Transition Battalions as a way of taking care of these soldiers who were going to have 6 or more months of rehab, right? So they definitely have a medical need for rehab. The Army doesn't have a place for them, so they create these paperwork battalions so that they can keep them on an Army base in a hospital there or something like that. So while they're on their rehab, they continue to receive pay from the Army. Now, Specialist Golden, remember, she thought she was going to be medically retired. She'd never be in a uniform again. Suddenly she's called up to active duty and she says, okay, sorry, I went and got a medical marijuana card, but I'll be upfront about it. I'll tell you all about it. Here's my card, and I won't use medical marijuana anymore, right? Because, of course, in the Army, you can't use medical marijuana, which is ridiculous, but that's the policy and everyone knows it. So she said, all right, I won't use anymore. Here's my legal card. And usually what happens in the Army, if you're forthright about your usage, especially medical marijuana, especially in a state where it's allowed, they'll put you through the substance abuse program, right? Pee in a cup, be good, no problem. But that's not what they did to her. Instead, what they did to her is they made her submit to frequent urinalysis, and she kept coming up positive for weeks and weeks and weeks. And to the Army, they said, oh, that's evidence of recent marijuana use. Now, those of you who followed Paul Armentano's report or his presentation in Aspen on rebutting the toxicologist know that you can have a positive test for marijuana for up to 100 days after you quit cold turkey, and that level can spike and drop because THC metabolites aren't eliminated from your body in any sort of linear fashion, right? They can go up, they can go down. So it's no evidence that she was using again, and she wasn't using again. But as far as the Army was concerned, that was evidence of recent marijuana use. So for this offense, she was given an Article 15. Now, military folks know what I'm talking about. For you non-military folks, Article 15 is punishment. It's like getting written up at work, but it's worse than that. It's on your permanent military record. It can affect your promotions. It can affect your benefits and so on. So she got this Article 15, right, and was facing being busted down to private from Specialist. Now, I don't know if they're talking private E2 or private E1, but it's a bust of at least 2 grades in pay, maybe 3 if you went all the way down to E1 from Specialist, and faced confinement to quarters, basically house arrest, for admitting that she was using medical marijuana. Since then, this formerly perfect soldier with no behavioral problems, who's been serving for 9 years and never been written up for anything, now suddenly, since February, she's gotten 22 negative counseling statements. And she's basically saying, oh, they're trying to create a paper trail, which I believe they are too. And they threatened her with felonies, saying that she'd be arrested and could face 2 years in prison. This mother of 4 who served our country for 9 months, who's bedridden, who's puking, who's taking chemotherapy, who's got 2 autoimmune disorders that leave her racked in pain. Yeah, we're going to put her in prison for 2 years. No, what this is all about is the U.S. Army trying to force Specialist Golden into a dishonorable discharge. It's all about saving money and cutting costs. Because if they can get her out with a dishonorable discharge, she loses her military retirement, she loses her disability benefits, she loses her educational benefits, and she has to go through the rest of her life applying for jobs with that black mark on her record. Dishonorable discharge after serving our country for 9 years. This is the uniform of the Oregon National Guard, by the way, a state militia in a state that allows medical marijuana, after she used medical marijuana on the advice of a retired colonel who just processed her paperwork to separate from active duty. Called up at the last minute, forced into this warrior battalion, transition battalion, and now facing all of these heartaches and troubles because of her medical use of marijuana. Support the troops, huh? Support the troops. Yeah, unless they use medical marijuana. Check out the rest of that story up at OregonLive.com. I've got it up at our blog at stash.normal.org. Protest this. This is ridiculous. Give this woman the respect she is due as a soldier, the respect she's due for serving our country. She did nothing wrong in the state of Oregon. Everything she did was perfectly legal in the state of Oregon. You got to give this woman an exception. Please help out Specialist Golden. I'm Radical Russ. For everyone here at NORML.org, for Ganja John, and for Cannabis Carrie, thanks for tuning in. The banner will be back next week. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
We love the earth.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it.
Don't forget, we got CDs to give away. The first 2 people email me, stash@normal.org, with a picture of you with a protest sign. They're yours.
You plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.